Premier Kenny will be speaking at 4:30. So we will recess from the regular meeting to view his address. And then once the address is complete, we will come back and resume our regular meeting. I would also like to move the audited financial statement that is positioned at 5.3 up into section 4 of presentations. And hopefully we'll be able to complete that prior to 4:30 of the Premier's items. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Donna?
I approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Now we move on to approval of the minutes. We have two sections. Oh, sorry, thank you. Going back to approval of the agenda, call the question, all in favor? So moved. Thank you. Now we move on to approval of minutes. We have two sections of minutes here to approve. The first is the minutes of the regular meeting of the October 27, 2020 board meeting. And then any notes or conversations regarding those minutes? Thank you, Jen. Call the question, all in favor? So moved. Now we need approval of our organizational meeting of October 27, 2020. May I have a motion to approve those minutes? Doug, thank you. Call the question, all in favor? So moved. We have no business arising from the minutes. Presentations, 4.1, student services for at-home learners.
I have to get one. Go ahead, just go ahead. Okay, yeah, I'll get one.
All right, thank you, everybody. I'm just here to do a quick presentation for what we've been doing for at-home learners and what at-home learning looks like. Leon's just going to bring up our presentation. Karen Rance here. Didn't want to do this today, but she was had another commitment. And since I've been working closely with her, I said, yeah, be happy to do this presentation to you today. So some of you may be curious what that looks like for some of our at-home learners. So the suite we use for our at-home learners and our teachers, we give them a set of tools to use. Office 365, Microsoft Teams with Microsoft Word is our tool that we use in 51. We also have our microsites, so websites for teachers to build. We also have digital portfolios students can use and a number of tools that teachers can access. We provide training for these tools. Now, teachers obviously have a number of tools in their schools that they use, go to the internet and find to accommodate or to add on to what our basic package is. Things like Pear Deck and Flipgrid. These are all kind of little pieces that they add together. But essentially, all of our teachers have access to the same toolbox that allows them to teach at-home learners. So from a K-5 perspective, it looks very similar to what you would see in a grade 1 or a kindergarten class. Every student has one teacher. Now that teacher on Microsoft Teams typically has their day laid out. They have a website where they have all of their activities for the day. With our K-5, our teachers have the ability to send paper home for those classes. It's not all digital. Parents can drop off packages at schools where the teachers can mark because there's a lot of numeracy and literacy activities that still require writing in paper, let's be honest. So we've given a lot of flexibility with that. But for the most part, there's asynchronous and synchronous learning happening. So it might be for the first 20 minutes of the day, the teacher does some reading assignments, then they leave the call for 30 minutes, or they stay on the call while they go do an activity and then come back. So it's the teacher there online, but it's not all day sitting in front of the screen. The student goes out and does other activities while they're learning through the day. Now, for our middle schools and high schools, not all of our teachers are at-home learning teachers. So if I was in a middle school, I may have math with Mr. Shields in the morning, and I might have somebody else teaching me in the afternoon. So that teacher may be teaching an in-person classroom in the morning, but teaching a virtual classroom online. Same thing, that teacher has a website possibly, they have other tools that they're using, and the students are joining those calls. The teacher may have a day where they spend 15, 20 minutes explaining a math activity, and then the rest is working on their assignments, and with the teacher on the call, available if they have any questions. They also have office hours. Different schools are doing it a little different, but basically the teachers are available for them. And on Teams, you're seeing more of a digital world happening at the middle schools and high schools. There's less of a need for that paper because the students are used to working online, especially in our middle schools and high schools, so they're submitting those assignments online. But a middle school or high school student could have, 2 or 3 teachers, maybe 4, teaching in different classes at one time. So what I wanted to focus a little bit on how we've been supporting students and parents. Our teachers can obviously send resources home if they need to. These are in our school mail for that. Parents experiencing technical difficulties can reach out to the tech department at home. So typically we ask parents to go to the at-home learning teacher first if they're experiencing issues. But if those issues can't be resolved, that they can bring it to me. So I work with a number of families in our computer lab because they're just frustrated. They want to come in and speak with somebody and sit down and go through things. And I'm always happy to do that as long as we can social distance. We can do that. I've gone to people's houses and met them on their lawn of their house and wiped down their computers for them and tested their computers. We really tried to have a service model where parents are feeling frustrated. I've been working with a persistent parent over the last 2 weeks who just has frozen Teams calls. We've done CPU tests. We finally figured out that she's running Linux on an older laptop, but she was so excited because they downloaded a different version, a hacked version of Teams, and now it's not using so much processor power. So we have some parents that are really persistent and persevering, and I applaud them. I said, I really applaud their perseverance because I would have thrown this thing through the window 1 week ago. So we've really been trying to reach those frustrations, what those parents are having at home, knowing that it is technology. There are bugs in the system. It always doesn't work perfect. Sometimes it freezes. But ideally, once they kind of get to know it, they're there. So we also have 2 teachers working out of the Ed Center here that just create paper packages for parents. We have a handful of parents who don't have access to technology, may be on reserve, may have 4 or 5 kids in the house with limited access to Wi-Fi. So we did have that option available for some parents who do not have access to technology. So again, that looks like a very traditional model of sending work home, bringing work in, not only our staff, but our parents. I have personally created a number of videos. We have a number of videos from last year. How does a parent join Teams for this first time? How do you access your classes? How do you submit assignments? So a lot of the problem is those resources are there, but sometimes it's easier just to phone us and ask us, which we're most days happy to take those phone calls, right? And then supply them some resources as well. So we have that there for them. How we supported staff, as you know, we found some funding. We've added extra equipment to them. Now our document cameras have been backordered for the last 2 months. But we've created a survey for all of our at-home learning teachers. We have about 100 teachers that are teaching some type of at-home learning class. And so we sent out a form for them to fill out if they required any of this extra equipment. We didn't want to be wasteful. So some people needed a document counter. Some people said, just get me an extension cord so I can move my counter around my kindergarten class because somebody is over here, so there's over there. So some people said, yeah, I just need a second monitor. So that stuff is getting out to teachers to try to make their lives a little easier. We've hired a company called Logix, who's a robotics company and a support company. And one of the reasons we did that, they had hired a person called Mario Estede. He is a teacher himself with a business degree that was the lead teacher for Microsoft for the last 5 years. He started in Vancouver, went to Calgary, been in Toronto, him and his wife were both teachers. Microsoft wanted to move him. And he reached out to us and said, hey, we're offering training sessions on Teams and everything Microsoft. And so we've actually recruited him to be available to our teachers 24 hours a day with any questions they have or complications they're having. Sometimes it's our team looking into those problems to help him. But for the most part, he's able to answer the questions very quickly, give them the resources they need. We've also opened that opportunity up to principals to bring him into their schools. So I know a number of schools already have brought him in for presentations. But it's really nice for myself and my team to have somebody else looking at some of the issues. And this is always growing. So Microsoft Teams and Office 365, tomorrow they have a call with all the new features. So just trying to stay one step ahead of all their features is really nice to have him available. And then Karen's worked really hard too on finding professional learning opportunities for administrators and teachers using Corwin, Scholastics, and SAPDC. That's not only relevant to our at-home learning teachers, but also our in-classroom teachers, because a lot of people are aware that we may be sent home today at 4:30, right? There's a lot of talk. So we're trying to prepare all of our teachers to be prepared online. And really it's a good thing, because the stuff I'm doing online, I can do for homework for my students and so forth. So we've added digital software technology. We're using My Blueprint for elementary schools. That's really neat technology to see even in the classroom, so how that works. If you look at some of our schools, they'll put QR codes on all the desks. And all the teacher does is they go with their iPad and they click the QR code and they take a picture of the student's homework, and it goes in that kid's portfolio, so parents can be checking for growth. And what they're doing at their homes is they're going into their portfolio and they're taking pictures of work, and it's keeping that whole digital portfolio alive for them. And that follows the student from year to year, teacher to teacher. That's why we've kind of gone with a pilot and vision approach. And then there's also been a number of resources and materials bought from the curriculum library downstairs. Karen can speak more of that if she was here. But yeah, so we've been trying to do a lot of things to try and keep and support not only our staff, but our parents and our students when they're doing home learning. It definitely comes with its challenges, but for the most part, people have been positive and moving working through those opportunities or those challenges. Questions?
It's amazing how far forward we've catapulted in the past half year. But I know I'm extremely thankful for online learning. I'm extremely thankful for the work Jesse and your team have done to keep our families connected, to be educating our families and increasing their capacity so that they can come alongside their kids as they're at home, whether it's online learning full-time or in isolation. We're able to be flexible with that, and we're all continuing to learn and move forward. So I think that's really, really fantastic, and it's commendable to everyone involved. It's a huge learning curve. Are there any questions for Jesse at this point? Yes, Christine.
Yeah, I just want to echo my thanks to Jesse and the technology team. They're not only working at helping at-home learners and the parents, but they're also working through all the network challenges we have with all the extra use and with all the activity trying to infiltrate, of course, our systems and whatnot. And so really are working hard to make sure we stay running and are safe in that aspect. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to bring up, like, we're investing in this as parents as well, too, right? So from a parent perspective, we have Tyler Patton, he's homeschooling, his wife's homeschooling their students right now. So us as a team, we're young parents as well. So we're working with everybody because we know what it's like as parents too to be home last year, trying to teach our kids and stuff, trying to manage our jobs. So there's a lot of good resources out there so thank you for that. But as parents, we're working through this well too. So thank you for that. Thank you for your support, teachers.
Sure.
And just to close and echo again, I think that when we take a look at our division priority of innovation, I want to say thank you to our team, our tech team, who work closely with schools and listen to schools and then develop an innovative response. And really, that's what you've been responsive. Teachers say, gee, I wonder about, and you're solution-centered, you're responsive and you're client-centered, not only for staff, but for parents. And that's made a huge difference. You would believe the above and beyond. Like I've gone into the computer room and there would be Jesse, like with 3 kids and a parent, and helping them sort of navigate how to use the technology with utmost patience and just really wanting to make sure it works for every kid. And that doesn't happen in a lot of places. That's amazing. And schools doing the same type of work. And so, and I know that you always look through the lens of what does it look like from the teacher's perspective? What does it look like from the parent's perspective? And then you end up with an amazing combination. Thank you, Jesse and team.
Thank you. Doug.
Yeah, also, I'd just like to say, think of where we are today as opposed to where we were in March. You know, the learning community skill set has gone so far, and there was bumps in the road for sure, but congratulations to your team, and actually to the entire learning community in Lethbridge. I mean, we have parents that are doing things they've never done before. And unfortunately, it takes a pandemic to do something like this, but it is a positive, it's a spin-off. So thanks again, and we do appreciate all you do from all of us here at the board.
No, thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Now we move on to 4.2, 2020 Honoring Spirit Award. The Honoring Spirit Award offers the opportunity to celebrate exceptional students nominated by members of their education communities based on their exemplary leadership, courage, and commitment to their cultures and educational paths. They inspire their peers, teachers, education leaders, and community members while respecting the agency of other students to do the same in their own ways. And this year, the winner of the Honoring Spirit Indigenous Student Award honorarium is Rochelle April Daniels. Rochelle is a grade 2 student at Proby Elementary School. And so we celebrate Rochelle, and I'm waiting for an opportunity, hopefully in the near future, to be able to present her award to her. So we're very proud of you, Rochelle. Now we move on to now we're going to move on to our audited financial statement. Christine, if you would introduce.
Sure, it is my pleasure to welcome with us today our auditors from BDO. We have Bill Zobel, the manager, with Davis DeCulver, who's with the manager, and of course they're accompanied by Mark DeBoer, who's going to, after the auditors, say a few words, and Mark will present the audited financial statement. So come on up.
Good, perfect. All right, good afternoon, everybody. As Christine said, my name is Davis DeCulver. I'm the audit manager for this audit, and Will is the audit partner. So I know that we have another appointment at 4:30, so I will make this quick. But so it is a clean audit, and so we have audited the financial statements of the Lethbridge School Division, which comprise of the statement of financial position as of August 31st, and the results of the operations, change in net assets, cash flows, and results of remeasurement gains and losses for the year then ended, and notes to the financial statements, including a summary of the significant accounting policies. In our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the division as of August 31st, 2020, and its results of the operation, change in net assets, cash flow, and results of remeasurement gains and losses for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. The rest of the audit report just kind of goes into a little bit more in depth as to the responsibilities of those charged with government, management, and the auditor. So were there any questions on that?
Any questions from the board?
Perfect. All right, so I will now just let Mark take you through it. Perfect, thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure to present the 2019-2020 audited financial statements and related reports, which have all been provided in the agenda. The following presentation of these documents is a high-level review of the financial statements. It provides management discussion and analysis, as well as some healthy indicators in the report. During the presentation, we will review the following areas: student enrollment, the division's financial position, accumulated surplus and reserves, statement of operations, financial health, and additional data that might be available for the 1920 financial statements. So we'll start with enrollment for 2019-2020. We had 11,753 students from early ed to grade 12, which was a 2.18% increase from 18-19. This increase was throughout all elementary, middle, and high school. Moving on to the statement of financial position, which is shown in page 5 of your financial statement. As of August 31st, 2020, the division had $26.71 million of financial assets, which mostly consist of cash and receivables from the province. The receivables from the province vastly relates to the amounts owing from Alberta infrastructure on capital projects, as well as we have receivables from the federal government on municipal. Within the financial position, there's $10.7 million of financial liabilities, most comprised of payables and unspent deferred capital contributions. So within the $10.7 million, there's $5.88 million of accounts payable, which includes unearned revenue, which was changed in prior years. There's $247,000 relates to the sick time liability because that time vests and accumulates, and that's shown in note 7. And then the remaining 4.56 relates to unspent deferred contributions as outlined in Schedule 2. This comprises of $110,000 for deferred operating, including FMI and other deferred revenues. There's $4.35 million relating to IMR and CMR stimulus funding, so that's infrastructure maintenance and renewal. And there's about $5,000 of unspent capital directly relating to capital planning projects. Overall, the division has $16 million of net financial assets. As you can see, this amount now excludes the spent deferred capital contributions, which was historically recorded in the liability section. That $16 million, in combination with the non-financial assets of $155 million and spent deferred capital contributions of $64 million, equals our accumulated surplus. Of the non-financial assets, the vast majority relates to capital assets, including $154.4 million of tangible capital assets, which has been increased by $16.4 million for buildings and our work in process. So for the development of the new Dr. Robert Claxton Elementary School. And we've had additional equipment and vehicles for about $241,000. So once again, once we take that $16 million, we add the non-financial assets and remove the spent deferred capital, we end up with $22.88 million in accumulated surplus. And that's shown in more detail on note 9 within the financial statement, but I'll outline it here. Within accumulated surplus, we have $691,000 unrestricted reserves and $9.76 million of operating reserves. Those together give us our accumulated surplus from operations of $10.45 million. Within that amount are some major components of our reserves, including school base reserves, $2.64 million, school generated fund activities, $2.2 million, and that's always removed when we look at our adjusted accumulated surplus from operations, as that's in our SGM account. And some of the other large ones that to note are the $550,000 for enrollment shortfall for 2021 to support in the budget, and we also have staffing stability of $636,000. I know I did provide a detailed report of reserves earlier, and I highly recommend to reference that as well as in the report. The accumulated surplus from operations is $10.45 million, in addition with the investment in tangible capital assets for board supported assets. Our capital reserves of $6.4 million and our endowment of $320,000 equals our total accumulated surplus of $22.88 million, which then agrees to the statement of financial position. Just want to note that many of these reserves that we have are planned to support the next couple of budget years, especially with the reduced enrollment of COVID-19. Within the statement of operations, found on page 6 of the financial statement, there's $125.95 million of revenue, with over 94% come from the government of Alberta. Overall, there was a $2.21 million decrease from our operating budget. That comes from reductions of IMR revenues, as a large portion was capitalized during the year. And we had a significant reduction in our school-generated fund revenues, such as donations, fees, fundraising, due to school closures. Those two reductions are somewhat offset by an additional $2 million that the division received from the City of Lethbridge's bus replacement fund, as they are no longer providing those services for the division. Within expenditures, it totaled $124.65 million. Approximately 80% is directly related to staffing. And this one had a larger swing of $7.31 million is under operating budget. Some of the big factors are the COVID-19 school closures. That has significant impact on multiple areas, including staffing, supply costs, school-generated funds, substitute teaching costs, and many other factors. We also had average teaching costs that were less than expected. With the reduction in school-generated fund revenues, we also had the relating reduction in school-generated fund costs. And similar to the IMR, we also had significantly less costs because a lot of the amounts were capitalized as part of our large infrastructure maintenance and renewal plans with Senator Buchanan and Westminster heating and lighting upgrades. As you can see by the chart, over 83% relates directly to construction, where 17% relates to plant operation, maintenance, transportation, and administration. As mentioned before, approximately 80% directly relates to staffing within our certificated and uncertificated staff. As shown in our management and discussions executive summary and other reports that are on the website, we do provide a visual aid as well to try to show what has changed in the operating budget, and that's available on our website. As kind of discussed, some of the major impacts are instruction. Grades 1 to 12 had cost savings due to COVID-19, school closures, staffing, as we had average teacher cost savings, and additional savings within the school-based budgets due to school closures. These reductions were somewhat offset by the additional technology evergreen that occurred during the year for the secondary base. Plant operation maintenance also saw a reduction, and that mostly relates to the reduction in IMR as those costs were capitalized. If you want to know more or you want to see an interactive view of our finances, we do have our financial reporting dashboards. So we both have this one that's done on a division-based level, and we also have on a school-based level. So you can go drill down and look at each one of these. We also have a live financial reporting dashboard that you can see both the division and the school-based level at any point in the year. Therefore, if you take the $125 million of revenues and do less the $124 million of expenditures, you come out with an operating surplus of $1.3 million, which has gone back into reserves. When we look at the financial health of the division, we lost financial compared to how we compare with school divisions across the province as well as comparable sizes. Our comparative size for school divisions is between 9,000 to 20,000 students, so we're right in that range. We look at some of the ratios. For accumulated operating surplus, we have a ratio of 6.61, where comparable size ones from last year were 5.29. Liquidity, so that's how easily we can turn our assets or financial assets into cash. We have a 2.5 ratio compared to a 1.9 ratio, meaning that we have more liquid assets, so we can easily meet our financial obligations as they come. Working capital per student, we have significantly more. We have 1,400 versus the 901, and that directly relates to the increased amount of reserves that we have due to strong financial position and planning in the past. When you're looking at capital asset net book values compared to costs, As you can see, we are higher than comparatives on both schools and equipment, and that's part of us typically being a growing division, adding schools and upgrading our facilities. And then capital reserves per student, we're sitting at 584 compared to 274 by other comparable school divisions. That relates to us saving money in the future for our capital projects and evergreen programs. There's a ton of additional data that's found on the website as well. So I would highly recommend that if anyone wants to know more, they can go in. Within the financial statements, we have additional unaudited schedules as well. So we have our schedule of fees, which gives information about the types and amounts of fees being charged throughout the school division. As you can see, there'll be a huge fluctuation this year with COVID-19. We also have additional details on central administrative expenses, which give a breakdown by the different types and categories of administrative costs. As part of the red tape reduction by the province did remove 2 unaudited schedules from the prior years. That includes the schedule of differential reporting and the schedule of nutritional program expenditures. We also provide additional notes and disclosures within our financial statements to give more information. One being school-generated funds in Note 15. It shows we're at a $2.3 million unexpended school-generated fund balance. So that's money that we're sitting on at the school-based level in their school-generated funds, including $71,000 of unearned revenue and $2.2 million sitting in reserves. We also provide visual aids, try support in the understanding of our audit, financial statements, and reports. So we give information on students and revenues and allocations. We give additional information on expenditures and program allocations, and additional information on where we are sitting with our surpluses and reserves. So I'd just like to know if there is any additional questions.
Any questions for Mark? Donna?
I don't have the question, but Mark, I want to thank you for the in-depth presentation you gave to the board, and I also want to thank you for the visuals. I think that they are really, really helpful in looking at the big picture. So I want to thank you for all the great work you do.
Thank you, Donna. Can I have a motion to approve the audited financial statements? Tyler?
I move that the board approve the audited financial statements for the 2019-2020 fiscal year as presented.
Thank you, Tyler. Call the question, all in favor? So moved. Mark, thank you. Well, you can stay put for a second. I just want to thank you for, you work with excellence. And so I thank you for your integrity in your work, and your excellence has placed us in a position where, in a precarious year, we are in a good position. So thank you for that. And Will and Avis, I would like to thank you for the time that you have taken as we work on our finances with us. So thank you for being here, and thank you for the work that you do. Mark, I think what we'll do is, since you're there, we're just going to move forward to the budget update. If we can do that, or is that possible? Okay. Okay.
You have 15 minutes, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just while we're getting signatures, I'd just like to give a couple comments to the finance committee. It's obviously not a one-man show. I have an amazing team that has supported it throughout. And they do a lot of work, and obviously the leadership here at the division as well, the guidance that they provide. All right, it's my pleasure to also present the 2021 operating budget update, which is an update from the preliminary budget that was developed and approved in May 2020. This budget is an update to the September 30th enrollment count, which saw a significant decrease from original projections in preliminary budget and all the other additional updates from the budget development. The operating budget takes the preliminary budget of $134.45 million of revenue, including the $2.72 million of reserves that were included and approved by the minister, and then updates it for additional information that we received since developing the preliminary budget. Some of these updates include a $2.65 million projected weighted moving average adjustment for reduced student enrollment due to COVID-19. Overall, the division resulted in 504 less students than in the prior year, and a total of 770 students less than in the preliminary budget. Many of these reductions relate to students that have switched to homeschooling instead of in-class or being provided at-home learning from our division due to COVID-19 pandemic. As part of COVID-19, the division did receive some federal funding of $4.14 million to support the COVID and online learning. We did have additional updates to operating revenues and our transfers that are required, but the overall update is $135.88 million. The two largest components is obviously the weighted moving average adjustment and the safe return to school grant that we received. The following is an overview of the financial effects from the preliminary budget, whereas you can see in the Alberta education line items, so the first three line items relate to the weighted moving average adjustment, and then you can see within the project and contracts, that's where the additional federal grant funding is being allocated. To clarify, the weighted moving average adjustment is used so that the division can defer the related funding reduction from the province so that the division does not have an extreme fluctuation in the following budget year from both the removal of enrollment affecting our current year weighted moving average next year, as well as having to pay back the effects from this year. Therefore, as we've already talked about the major changes in the funding structure, we can now go and drill down on the actual expenditures. So starting with the Safe Return to School Grant Program, we received $4.14 million of federal funding that's getting flowed to the province. That was spent by almost doubling our division teacher substitute budget by adding an additional $1.3 million. Adding additional 14.6 FTE of online teaching staff, totaling $1.15 million. Utilizing the federal grant to cover 5.5 FTE of online teachers and to support the online programs, as we'll discuss later. An additional $437,000 to support staffing and substitute costs. An additional $296,000 for additional roving caretakers and supplies for caretaking within our schools. An additional $108,000 for supporting technology and online learning, an additional $290,000 for supplies and equipment related to COVID-19. In relation to the other major factor updating the budget, we did have a $2.65 million weighted moving average adjustment for 2021. As kind of discussed before, we have allocated 5.5 FTE online teachers to the grant funding, and we've removed 4.1 FTE of contingent staffing that was set aside for the fall in case we had higher enrollment and to address hotspots. However, these were not utilized due to the reduced enrollment. As shown, the 5.5 FTE was a direct transfer from the one program to the school nutrition, or sorry, the Safe Return to School grant program. We had the additional 14.6 FTE of additional online teachers, and we have the removal of 4.1 FTE of contingent staff that were not utilized. Therefore, with the other minor adjustments within our school and division budgets, resulted in a net increase of 12.3 FTE for the preliminary budget. Note that the preliminary budget originally planned on 3.8 FTE reduction. Therefore, when adding the 12.3, we had an overall 8.5 FTE reduction from the prior year. Through the development of the operating budget, there was an overall net decrease of 6.1 FTE in support staffing as well, in which the majority relate to the removal of contingent staffing that was set aside for potential enrollment increases. The weighted moving average adjustment was also able to be minimized by a projected $1.1 million in average teacher cost savings. During the preliminary budget, average teacher costs are estimated based on current levels of staffing, projected grade movement, retirements, and new hires. And this is recalculated in the operating budget, whereas if the actual teacher costs or average teacher costs are less than what we originally planned, that saving is allowed to be used throughout the division. Overall, if we use the additional $550,000 of reserves to balance the shortfall, the division is then able to cover the $2.65 million weighted moving average adjustment to hold our schools harmless for the unexpected student reductions during a mid-year review. The following is also a overview of the financial effects of the change throughout the division and the related effects of the additional grant, the weighted moving average adjustment, and other adjustments that were updated throughout the budget. I would highly recommend that if you'd like to know more, please review the 2021 operating budget executive summary and additional information that's available on the website. That concludes my presentation of the 2021 operating budget update, and we'll give it a couple more minutes for any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. Are there any questions? Christine?
Yeah, I want to thank Mark again for all the hard work you put in, and this infographic is very clear and really helps explain a complicated adjustment that had to take place with our budget, and again, very thoughtful on how we're going to address the adjustment to the weighting from the average that will not only impact this year, but would impact next year. And so that's very good, and so thank you very much.
Any questions? Tyler?
Just a quick comment, not a question. When you're doing the second half, like the back bit, second page, when you're clicking on it, you click and it puts the little line under what you're talking about. That's really good. I think that really helps focus on exactly what you're talking about. And I think that when you get to the part where you're doing the budget for the public and everything there, that really is great. I really thought that was good. My mind wanders. So I thought it was good that the line gets there and it gets me back focused to what exactly we're talking about, what number you're on and everything. So keep it. I thought that was really good.
And the presentation is actually already available on the website, so someone can click through and it will highlight each of the
Oh,
sections.
as it goes. to the
And it
end.
shows the arrows, yeah.
That's great.
Can I have a motion to approve the budget update? Donna?
I move to approve the budget update for the 2020 and 2021 operating budget.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? So moved. Thank you, Mark.
But I'm not that, one of you.
All right, we're now at 4.3, the recess for the Premier's address. So we will reconvene our regular board meeting when the address is